So our project today needs these supplies. You need something to pour some paint onto. Could be a paper plate, could be a washable dish, could be something out of the garbage, could be a piece of cardboard, just something to squirt some paint on. The paint colors we'll be using is green, red, and yellow. You will also need 2 sponges. If you only have one, you can definitely make this work, but it's kind of nice if you have 2 because then you can have 2 different sizes. You'll need a scissors, a very nice sharp scissors, so you might need to get an adult and ask them if you can use their scissors. A Q-tip, if you have one, or you can use your pinky finger, and a black marker or a dark colored marker. Go get your supplies and I'll meet you back here. You'll also want to have a white sheet of paper, some scrap paper, and if you have any yellow paper, that can be a really fun touch too. So first up, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking our sponges and we're going to be drawing a shape on each sponge. This one I might be able to make 2 shapes out of because it's large. This sponge is a little smaller and I've already used it for a different craft project. So I probably only get 1 shape out of this one. The shapes we're going to be making are like a teardrop shape. Okay, you could also make them like a football shape. Just depends on what you want yours to look like, and they could all be different. So this line, I'm going to keep that curve there because that'll work fine, but I want to get rid of that point. So I'm going to do this one like a big football shape. That'll work for me. And then I'm going to take my other sponge and I'm going to try to get 2 shapes out of this one. So I'm going to try to use half for one and half for the other. We want these to be long, stretched out shapes. So I'm going to take mine here, and it's kind of hard to draw on sponges, so don't worry if it's not perfect, because we're going to be cutting them anyway, which is tricky too. So you can either do a stretched out football called an ellipse, or if you want to round it out so it's more like a teardrop, that's okay too. So now that I have my shapes done, now I just need to cut them out. Go slow and careful and use a sharp scissors. When you're using your scissors, make sure that you're cutting with big open scissors, big alligator chomps, and keep your thumb up to the ceiling. Thumbs up for scissors. Big alligator chomps. Snip. Especially if you have a sponge like me that has a scratchy side on the other side, you have to do really big chomps to get it in there. If you're not choosing to make the same type of project as me and you want to make a different type of stamp, you definitely can out of your sponges. My daughter is trying to make a star shape, but look at what almost happened. She almost cut this point of the star off because she was cutting from here, and it's hard to stop right exactly there. So what I suggest, instead of trying to turn your sponge and cut like this, because then it could rip, take your scissors out and cut from the edge. Snip, much easier. So this project we're going to be making some poinsettias. These images are from a really good book that talks about the legend of the poinsettia and why we see the poinsettia a lot around Christmas time. So at the end of this book, it shows these beautiful blooming poinsettias, and you can see that they have kind of that football shape. Some of them have some rough edges sticking out the sides too, but they have green leaves. And then when they bloom, instead of getting a new different kind of flower, the green leaves turn red. The center parts of the flowers eventually turn kind of yellow. I have a poinsettia here for you to look at, as well as some images to show you of what a poinsettia looks like. So these are the bright red leaves of the poinsettia, and right in the middle, mine isn't fully bloomed yet, but right in the center, those little circles are going to turn a bright yellow color. For right now, mine are still green with little bits of red because they're not fully bloomed yet. But this is a poinsettia, and you can see that it has dark green leaves as well as red blossoms. We see these a lot around Christmas time. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to take the thing that I have to put my paint on. I have a paint palette. You can use whatever you want, as long as it's washable, using washable paint. I'm going to take a little bit of my, I'm going to start with my green paint first. And this is going to be done in layers. So I'm going to put some green paint on there. If you're not squeezing from a bottle, that's okay. You can just dish out a little blob there too. So I'm going to take this shaped flower, I think. Well, maybe I'll take this one. I think I like this one. And I'm going to be careful about not using the side that I drew on, just in case that would leak onto my paper. I don't really want a black outline around my leaf. So I'm going to press down on this side, and I'm going to just lay it on top of the paint and make sure, I'm just kind of dabbing it, dab, dab, dab. I'm going to check the other side and make sure that the whole sponge is covered in green. I can even wipe it a little bit if I need to get more on the edges, but I want to make sure that the whole thing is covered. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to test it. I'm going to make sure that I have the whole area covered, because sometimes the first time you stamp something or the first time you print something, it doesn't come out very well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a scrap piece of paper. This one has some marker on it already, and I'm just going to do a test one. I'm going to lay the paint down, and I'm not going to move it side to side. As soon as it touches the paper, I'm going to leave it where it is. I'm going to take my hand flat and press down on my sponge. Then I'm going to hold my paper as I pick the sponge up. So this one, I have a decent shape, but there's a lot of holes in there. So that means that I'm going to need a little bit more paint on my sponge next time. That's why it's important we do a test. So now that I did my test run, I'm going to put some more paint on my sponge. And if yours turned out pretty awful and not really a whole lot of a good shape or a whole lot of paint on there, you might want to do more than one test. Okay? In fact, I think I might do two. Okay? So I'm going to put it down, hand flat, press, and then pick it up. That one's much better. So now I think I'm ready for my real piece of paper. I'm going to put just a little bit more paint on it to make sure. And then the shape that we're looking for is the shape of the poinsettia. So I'm going to put this one with a point toward the center of the paper. The center of the paper is going to be where the center of the poinsettia is. So I'm going to do one green one, pointed at the center, but kind of near the edges. And I'm going to press with a flat hand, hold my paper down as I pull up my sponge. Okay? Since my poinsettia, I want it to be blooming, it's not going to have very many green leaves to see. So I'm just going to put a few in close to the edges so I have space to put the red ones here in the middle. Flat hand, press, hold the paper down as I peel it up. I might just do one more. Then I need to let this dry, and when the green paint is dry, I'll come back and I'll add the red. So I'm going to do one last leaf, I think. Remember, pointed toward the center, flat hand, press, hold the paper as you peel it up. So the best way to clean your sponges, I'm cleaning my tray at the same time, is to just put them under some water and just squeeze. Squeeze them out until the water turns clear again and there's no more tints of green. It's easier to clean your sponges if you do it when the paint is still wet, so don't wait till the end, because then you'll have a hard sticky mess and you might have to throw your sponges away instead of seeing what new things you can create with the sponges. Now that my green paint is dry, I'm going to start out with my red. I'm going to use my other 3 sponges, or if you washed your green one and it's already dry, or really close to dry, you can reuse that same one again. I'm going to do the same process, but this time I'm going to put a lot more of the red ones on, and I'm going to put them closer together, but I'm going to leave a space in the center. Now, to help me remember to not put any in the middle, I'm going to take a coin and put it in the middle of my picture. That way I know I can come close to the coin, but I'm not going to cover it up. So I'm going to go ahead and put paint on my sponges. I'm going to use both sizes, and I can layer them on top of the green because the green is dry. I don't want to totally cover up the green, but I can let it peek through behind. Now that I have all my stamps done, I'm going to carefully pull out my coin and I'm going to let this dry. If you don't have time to let it dry and you want to move on to the next step, you can, but you have to be super careful. The next step is to take a tiny bit of yellow, don't need a lot, and you're going to take your Q-tip, making sure that it's a cleaned Q-tip. You're going to dip your Q-tip in the yellow paint and you're just going to draw some dots by holding it up straight like a soldier. Okay. And you're just going to dip around in kind of a circle shape in the center. Then you can let it dry. If you feel more comfortable letting your red dry first, you can definitely do that. You can also put a teeny tiny bit of green onto the yellow if you're really careful. So I'm going to put a teeny bit on my tip, and instead of pressing it down the full weight, I'm just going to barely touch on those little yellow dots.